Hello, my name is Madeline Farrell, and this presentation is over the research method meta-analysis. This presentation will cover what is meta-analysis, the history of it, the key features of the method, an example, as well as benefits and limitations. So first off, what is meta-analysis? Meta-analysis is a quantitative research method. This method is utilized to collect and analyze data from multiple sources to find relationships between variables or the effectiveness of interventions. It can also be used to compare and look at inconsistencies between studies or differing results. The term meta-analysis was initially coined by Gene Glass, a statistician, in the year 1976. This method grew out of necessity due to an increase in research studies being published in many different fields. Researchers realized they needed a method that could help to collect and analyze many different sources of data to find connections and to generalize results. When initially coining the term, Glass used standard statistic procedures such as analysis of variance and regression analysis. His work was further expanded in the 80s by Hunter and Schmidt, who worked on ways to test the validity of results. Up next, I will be covering the key features of meta-analysis. Although this image does depict 10 steps for conducting a meta-analysis, I have condensed it down to 8 steps for this presentation. They cover the same thing as what is shown in this image. So the first step to conducting a meta-analysis is defining the research question, which will help to determine what is being looked for. So what relationships are being compared, what effectiveness of interventions is being looked at, and it would also help to determine what methodologies or types of analysis will be done later on in the process. The next step would be to look at already existing literature to find other meta-analyses that may have already been done, which could also help to find resources to use, or just find resources to use for the meta-analysis that is being conducted. So steps 3 and 4 of meta-analysis are deciding the effect size measure and deciding the analytical method. So first, deciding the effect size measure. Effect size is what determines the magnitude of a relationship between variables or the effectiveness of an intervention, and basically shows the significance of the findings. An example of an effect size measure would be correlation coefficient. This step can also include having to convert the effect size measurements of studies that are being used to match up with the effect size measure that is being used for the entire meta-analysis. Now, deciding the analytical method, this directly ties back to the research question. Depending on what the researchers want is what is going to determine what kind of analytical method they use. For example, if they want to examine heterogeneity between effect sizes by looking at different moderators and comparing those simultaneously, they would use something like a meta-regression analysis. So step 5 of conducting a meta-analysis is to decide on what software will be used for the analysis itself. Researchers need to take into account the complexities of the methodologies they're using, the data itself, and of course what the software that they use can do. For example, I have used SPSS in the past for statistical analysis, but there are also softwares that are specifically for meta-analyses. Step 6 is coding the effect size. This step includes creating a coding sheet. Researchers need to take a lot into consideration, such as the methods used, control variables, and of course, the different effect sizes of the studies. The last 2 steps of meta-analysis are conducting the analysis itself and reporting the results. So conducting the analysis sounds self-explanatory, but researchers do need to look into outliers, which could skew the results, or publication biases that could negatively impact the validity of findings. They also need to choose between fixed effects and random effects models for the analysis, and of course, they need to conduct the analysis, look at the results, and see what those results show. The last step is to report these results. This can be done through journal articles. These reports could discuss what these results show or what they mean, the significance of them, and this could be made available to other researchers or the public, and could help to expand upon the already existing research. So meta-analysis does have its benefits and limitations. So first, the benefits. Through pooling of data, meta-analysis is able to provide a better estimate of true effect, which enhances statistical power and the precision of results. It is also able to identify heterogeneity and inconsistencies in studies, as well as reduce the effects of publication bias by including unpublished studies, which helps to balance out representation in results. However, like I said, meta-analysis does also have limitations, which includes challenges in data pooling, such as differences in the types of studies or the outcomes of the studies, the existence of heterogeneity, which does tend to make the results of meta-analysis less valid or less generalizable, and of course, publication bias and select reporting, which means that usually only studies that have more significant results get published, which in turn could skew the results of the meta-analysis, which makes them less valid. An example of where meta-analysis could be done is a study similar to the one done by Bruin, Andrews, and Valentine in 2000. This meta-analysis examined 77 studies with sample sizes that ranged from around 1,000 people to 11,000 people and looked into the risk factors of PTSD in trauma-exposed adults. The effect sizes of each risk factor was looked into and analyzed. The meta-analysis was done to find connections between the risk factors, see which ones were the most likely to be predictors of PTSD, and overall find a more true effect size of the population. In conclusion, meta-analysis can be a very useful research method, especially in situations where there are large quantities of research that need to be studied. However, as mentioned in this presentation, meta-analysis, while beneficial, does have its limitations, where other studies and the way they are presented can negatively impact the findings in meta-analyses. And these are my sources. Thank you for watching.